What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. One person has died in Okinawa, Japan, following strong winds and rain caused by Typhoon Khanun. Hundreds of thousands of people there were left without electricity in the island chain after falling trees took out power lines. The powerful typhoon is moving slowly toward northern Taiwan before it is expected to move northwards back toward Japan later this week. Taiwan issued a sea warning for the typhoon on Tuesday and has not ruled out a land warning. As Taiwan and its neighbors brace for Typhoon Khanun, China is still dealing with the aftermath of Typhoon Doksuri. The death toll in China reached 20 on Tuesday after intense rain and flooding hit the country's northeast. Tens of thousands of people have been evacuated in Tianjin, while Beijing and its neighboring province reported downed power lines and damaged roads. On social media, Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen and Vice President Lai Ching-te posted messages of sympathy for the victims. Chinese state media reports that the Beijing government is setting aside around $15 million for rescue work in the affected areas. Dengue cases in Taiwan this year could top 1,000 by the end of the week. That's after more than 200 cases were reported last week alone. Taiwan South has been battling outbreaks of the disease this summer. Authorities there have been spraying chemicals to bring down the number of dengue-carrying mosquitoes. There are fears that the insects could breed in standing water left over from recent heavy rains, leading to even more cases. A new report from Taiwan's Commonwealth magazine shows that Taipei is heating up much faster than the global average. Sally Jensen spoke with Lin Ziping, a professor at National Tsinghua University and the head of its Building and Climate Lab, to find out more.
Taipei is heating up faster than the rest of the world and faster than almost every capital city in Asia. Why is that?
Taipei or some city like Kaohsiung or Tainan, they are close to the sea coast, so it should not have a very high urban heat island, because the definition of urban heat island is the warmth of the city and the coolest part, and the difference will be urban heat island. But maybe because the basin area and also the global change, so it increased the urban heat island in Taipei.
So Taipei is a basin that also has a lot of buildings. What is it about Taipei's buildings that makes the heat island effect so bad?
At best, it is because the basin typical of Taipei area. But we have a lot of artificial building or the pavement. For example, if we use the air conditioner, and it will emit heat and it will increasing the temperature of Taipei city.
What do you think needs to be done to Taipei's urban landscape to help it cool down?
I think at first is the greenery or keep the waterland of the Taipei city, because in this area, the water can evaporate and it will take some heat away. And the second way is to have a good organize of the building mass, because once you have a long facade across the riverside or around the park, and the wind from the park or the river cannot go through the building. But the most important one is to keep the buildings more energy efficiency, because if we that all the buildings they have good design, they use less air conditioning, and they will emit less heat to the urban area.
We're seeing similar trends in other cities around the world. Is this something we should be worried about?
Because for some cities in the middle of the United States, like Arizona, they will have like 10 degrees of difference between warmest part of the city and the coolest part of the city. But Taiwan is not like that condition. But we should be worried about, because in Taipei, for example, in Taipei, we have a basin area and we have a lot of artificial material, and coupled with climate change. So I think we are facing more and more serious problems in the future.
That was Sally Jensen speaking with Lin Ziping, the head of National Tsinghua University's Building and Climate Lab. Taiwan will build 80,000 new homes for the elderly over the next 3 years. That's under a new social housing policy from the Interior Ministry. Under that scheme, elderly people will be able to exchange private apartments in buildings without an elevator for a public unit that does have one. They can also switch from a private home to a public one in a different part of the country. The private homes can then be rented out to other tenants in need. The policy is meant to make it easier for elderly people to move closer to their families and provide them with safer and more accessible living spaces.
在现在台湾有很多老旧的房子，我们的长辈居住在没有电梯，可能是4层楼的这种公寓，爬上爬下非常不方便，而且也容易产生危险。
The government is working to make roads safer for people in wheelchairs by addressing the problem of hard-to-see curbs. But as John Van Trieste reports, this might not be enough to make Taiwan's roads fully accessible to people with disabilities.
Nearly 2 months after her accident, Lin Junjie's arm is still in a sling. While on her way to a meeting in Taipei on disability issues, her wheelchair went over a sidewalk curb she couldn't see was there. On Tuesday, she joined a press conference with other people with disabilities, bearing a message. It's time to make Taiwan's walkways fully accessible.
步道跟车道之间，它其实是有高低差，而且10来公分的高低差，我就没有认为它会是有个台阶，所以轮椅直接就开下去，然后人就飞扑到街上。
At least one lawmaker was at the event to offer support.
20公分以下就没有嘛，比如说像这个，它可能只有大概20公分以下就没有防护员。对，所以这就是我们说的嘛，我们觉得应该要在这些部分可能要一起来思考一下如何能够来补强。
The Interior Ministry now says it will work with the Transportation Ministry to deal with curbs under 20 centimeters high, ensuring accidents like Lin Junjie's won't happen again. But accessibility advocates say high curbs are just one of the obstacles people in wheelchairs face.
因为所有权是他的，所以围起来违章，那是违章哦哈。围起来，当他的停车位，很多都是把它当成家里的停车位、私有停车位，要不然就是什么围起来做生意、商店的一部分，这个都是违法。但是我们的政府机关没有人敢去取缔。
Last year, Taiwan made global headlines when an article called the country a pedestrian hell. With illegally parked scooters, narrow pathways, and uneven pavement, the country's infrastructure is already less than ideal for people without disabilities. For people with disabilities, getting around is that much harder. Justin Wu and John Van Trieste in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
An officer in Taiwan's military has been detained for allegedly selling secrets to China. Lieutenant Colonel Xie from the Army's Aviation and Special Forces Command was taken into custody on Monday. He is accused of leaking classified national defense information to China. Investigators say Xie also tried to recruit active and retired military personnel for his operation. Prosecutors have applied to hold Xie incommunicado over concerns that he could collude with accomplices. The presidential office has condemned the spying.
像这样的事情，背叛自己的袍泽，背叛自己的国家，他应该要受到法律最严厉的制裁。
Meanwhile, the frontrunner to be Taiwan's next president, Vice President Lai Ching-te, says Beijing is to blame for cross-strait tensions.
中国要摕台湾已经是几十年啊，唔是民进党执政，嘛唔是蔡英文总统做总统，嘛唔是赖清德要竞选总统才开始。
Lai was responding to criticism from the opposition that the current government has overseen worsening ties with China. The comments come as Lai prepares to visit the Americas later this month. On Wednesday, the presidential office announced the schedule for Lai's trip to Taiwan's diplomatic ally Paraguay. The 7-day itinerary will feature 2 U.S. stopovers in New York and San Francisco. Separately, Kuomintang presidential hopeful Ho Yo-ii has met with Japan's former Prime Minister Aso Taro. It's part of the Taiwanese opposition candidate's push to boost his foreign policy credentials ahead of next year's vote. Ho and Aso met behind closed doors on Tuesday at the headquarters of Japan's ruling party, the LDP. Neither released a statement. But earlier that day, Ho told senior LDP politician Hagiuda Koichi that his visit was about securing peace in the Taiwan Strait.
最主要是希望台海能够安定，台湾安全，日本安息，我们都能够让台日关系更加的紧密在一起。
Myanmar's deposed leader Aung San Suu Kyi has been pardoned on 5 of her 19 convictions, but she still faces decades in prison. The Nobel laureate and democracy icon was jailed in 2021 after the military seized power in a coup. Tuesday's pardon reduces her sentence from 33 years to 27. Myanmar's former president Win Myint also had his sentence reduced. For more on these pardons, Rick Lauert spoke to Manny Mong of Human Rights Watch.
Could you tell us what you think is behind this latest pardon, partial pardon for Aung San Suu Kyi? And does it show a softening in stance from Myanmar's military?
It's certainly isn't an acquiescing of the military stance to align with international requests. It's more the case that what it's doing is highlighting that Aung San Suu Kyi is a bartering chip. The day before they made these announcements about the clemency, they also said that they were going to extend the state of emergency for another 6 months. So I do believe it's a way to appease the regional powers and to sort of deflect the negative impacts of their decision to once again delay returning Myanmar back on the path of democracy.
And what do you think this move means for the people of Myanmar? Will it help them in their push for democracy? Will it appease them?
You know, about half the country is still in active conflict and resistance against the military. Everywhere else, there's a soft resistance, so to speak. But we still also have 48 townships that are under martial law. This means that the military is arbitrarily detaining, seeking to instill their power, and not allowing people to live in a way that respects their rights as civilians. So I don't think this is the military's way of retaining or returning any freedoms to Myanmar people. If anything, this is just going to make it much worse.
What do these latest developments from the top, from the junta in Myanmar, mean for everyday Myanmar people? What is life like there?
Well, people tell me that first and foremost, they're primarily concerned about getting food on the table, having access to livelihoods, and then, of course, the everyday fear of attack, of being arrested, of their loved ones going missing. And we do know that once they are detained by the military and its security forces, it's a very real threat that they could be tortured for information or they could be very, very badly beaten. So the absolute day-to-day violence as well that people are being exposed to is so extreme, Rick. And I don't think that we're really understanding just how much of a psychological impact people have had to suffer over the last 2.5 years.
That was reporter Rick Lauert speaking to Manny Mong of Human Rights Watch. Taiwan's fishing agency is banning the capture and sale of female berried crabs as part of a larger effort to protect the animals. Jaime Okan reports.
With a click of this plastic gun, these crabs are now safe. The tags are part of Taiwan's fishing agency's efforts to tackle the overfishing of crabs like these, females full of eggs, which are called berried crabs. Now their capture and sale has been banned until the end of the year. Conservationists hope that tagging the crustaceans will remind fishers to throw them back into the water, and that the tag itself will help them collect information vital to the crab's survival.
这样我们就可以知道说它这样洄游的路径，然后再去配合我们的海洋因子的资料，我们可以知道，那怎样的海洋因子是会影响它去移动的关键因素？这样。
Although catching these crabs can now result in fines of up to $5,000, Taiwan Fishing Agency hopes that local fishers won't be too crabby about the new rules. Leon Lien and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
In another shellfish story, a giant clam in southern Taiwan that had been a popular attraction for divers has died. The 60-centimeter wide mollusk lived in the waters near the tourist hotspot Kending. It was known locally as the king of the clams and the rose of the sea. But divers recently found the clam had died with just the shell left. Local officials say strong waves caused by a recent typhoon may be the cause of death. Thanks for watching What's Up Taiwan. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, enjoy these shots of the world's only panda triplets celebrating their 9th birthday in Guangzhou, China. I'm Eric Gao. Take care and see you next time.